GameQuest is brought to you by Smoky Mountain Organics, East Tennessee's most trusted health and wellness store focusing on natural products and organic remedies to a variety of ailments. Visit one of the 4 locations located in Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, Sevierville, and the newest location in Knoxville at 8018 Kingston Pike across from the Trader's Joe. And there you can also buy online at their website at SmokyMountainOrganics.com. It features the best brands in CBD products, bath and body care items, organic teas, and have the largest selection of plant therapy essential oils in Tennessee, plus many, many more items. So the new sponsorship promotion, if you go into any of their in-store locations and mention that you're a Vol fan and that you are a VolQuest subscriber, you're going to get 15% off your total purchase price. That's on any in-store prices or any in-store purchases at Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg, Sevierville, or the new Knoxville location. Your GameQuest edition for Missouri starts now.
It's another game day for Tennessee football and first-year head coach Josh Heupel. Get in the know with GameQuest, a VolQuest pregame podcast with Ben McKee and Eric Kane. GameQuest starts now.
Welcome to GameQuest, your Missouri edition. I am Eric Kane alongside Ben McKee, and Ben, it's Tennessee sits at 2-2 on the season, 0-1 in SEC play. A game on the road again for the second consecutive Saturday. Familiar turf for Josh Heupel. But anyway, I look around it, I dive into the numbers. I've been over it, as have you, all week long. Point blank, this is a game Tennessee can win, and I think Tennessee will win. What say you here on a early Saturday morning of game day? Happy game day.
Happy game day to you, my friend. Hope you are well. It's a game that Tennessee has to win first and foremost. It is a must win, which seems weird given that it's October 1st, only the 5th game of the season. But I truly believe this week and next week against South Carolina are going to swing Tennessee's season one way or the other. Tennessee's got to find a way to get this one because, as I mentioned, it will swing the season in a positive way or in a negative way. In the positive way, I think it's a big step towards getting to 6 wins. Will Tennessee actually be bowl eligible this season? Alluding to the investigation, obviously. Who knows? But you still want to get to 6 wins, even if Tennessee self-imposes a bowl ban. And hey, if you don't self-impose a bowl ban, then you get to go play in a bowl game. So this is a big one in terms of getting to 6 wins, this one and next week against South Carolina. You got to have them. You got to win because if you don't, then you're going to make it real hard on yourself to get to that 6-win mark because you got wins against Vandy and South Alabama coming up. But if you drop one of these 2 games to South Carolina or Missouri, then you have to pick off one of Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss, or Kentucky. And I think Tennessee could win against Kentucky, absolutely. I think Tennessee has a chance against Ole Miss. I wouldn't pick Tennessee to win that football game, but Ole Miss's defense isn't all that great. So who knows if Tennessee can put up some points and get into a shootout. And then obviously Alabama and Georgia are going to be really tough. So regardless of how you slice it, those 4 opponents, it's going to be a tough matchup for Tennessee. So Tennessee's got to make sure they pick up wins against Missouri and South Carolina in order to ensure that they do get to 6 wins.
You know, it's funny, Ben. You're either listening to the incredible Locked On Balls podcast daily, a Friday edition, or you might have had 99.1 The Sports Animal turned on Friday morning at around 6:30. Actually, no, you didn't because you were preparing to get on the air at that time as well. Point being, I mean, that's my topic here the last couple of days, man. And you beat me to it. This is a must-win game for Tennessee. And I say that in disclaiming right out in front, no, this doesn't mean Josh Heupel's getting fired if you lose this football game. If you lose this football game, do I think does it mean long-term non-success for Josh Heupel at Tennessee? No, it's just my why for this must-win game and why I believe it's a must-win game, my why is that, again, I've been diving into the numbers all week long. You and I are as close as anybody to the Tennessee football program, so maybe we're blinded a little bit. But, I mean, Tennessee's better than Missouri. Missouri might have more depth than Tennessee, but the front-end talent is, greater than to Tennessee's favor in a lot of ways. Quarterback play for Missouri is good. Running back play has been really, really good. But across the board, I would say Tennessee's more talented, and just the opportunity there, and we'll dive into it, but the rush defense for Missouri, atrocious. The defense overall, not good. I think Tennessee's defense is more talented. I think I would bet Tennessee's defense would come up with more stops and force a turnover or two compared to that of Missouri. So must win for me. It's just a game that you should win. Go out and get it because then again, like you pointed out, next week, South Carolina. If you lose this game, the South Carolina Kentucky game are must wins if you want to, get to that bowl eligibility mark. And I know Tennessee fans and even us in the media, we need to get out of the whole mindset of, well, if Tennessee can get to 6 wins, here's the path. But, until Tennessee's out of that tier, you got to talk about it. And that's kind of where we are. So you don't want to be in a position to where you have to win both South Carolina and Kentucky to get to 6 wins. I think this is a game that Tennessee can win. And that's what I'm expecting. Wow. Will it be easy? No, it will not be easy. There are going to be some challenges. And I think the challenges start with that Missouri offense, Ben, that will put up points and will make it tough on Tennessee's defense.
Well, first, if your Friday edition of Locked On Vols podcast weren't so negative, I definitely would listen to it. But I prefer positivity.
Is that this week's or last week's? Because last week's was negative. It's either I'm too hard on Tennessee or I'm not positive enough on Tennessee. There's never an in between, right?
That's right. But if all of your Friday Locked On Vols podcasts weren't so negative, I would definitely listen. But
yeah,
as I was saying, I'm a positive person. I'm a glass half full type of guy, Eric. So no Friday edition of Locked On Vols for me anytime soon until you change your mindset, sir.
Hey, real quick though, so in the Tennessee Tech game, not in the Florida game, but in the Tennessee Tech game and in this game right here going into Missouri, on our picks at volquest.com that we released on Friday, I have been the one with the highest score for Tennessee. And everybody says that I'm so hard on Tennessee, but yet I have Tennessee scoring the most points almost consistently this season. So just wanted to point that out.
How'd that work for you last week?
Yeah, well, I picked Tennessee to lose, but I picked Tennessee to lose by a little less of a margin.
I was close to my prediction. I had 31-21. And if Jimmy Callaway makes that catch on 4th and 5 and Tennessee can find a way to punch it in there's 21 points. And then Florida scored a garbage time touchdown. So I was close last week. I'll pat myself on the back for that one, if you don't mind. But this Missouri football team, it revolves around Connor Bazelak and Tyler Beatty. Those are the two guys that Tennessee is going to have to stop this week. And I think Connor Bazelak is a pretty good quarterback, quite honestly. Doesn't have a ton of talent around him. They just have a bunch of dudes at receiver. There's nobody that stands out. And for some teams, it could be a good thing if you have a bunch of receivers. And Missouri does. It's just not like Alabama and they have a bunch of good receivers. It's just a bunch of dudes, quite frankly. And nobody really stands out. They rotate in a lot of guys. Kiki Chisholm is their best receiver, in my opinion. A former transfer from Division II Angelo State prior to the COVID 2020 season. And he had a solid season, first season in Missouri last year. Caught 26 passes for 326 and a touchdown over the final 5 games. And they have 3 guys that they rotate in and out in the slot. Chance Looper, a redshirt freshman who is very talented youngster. Barrett Bannister, the old man of the group, a redshirt senior. And then Mookie Cooper, a redshirt freshman from East St. Louis that transferred to Missouri from Ohio State and hasn't played a ton just yet because he's working himself back from a foot injury during fall camp and didn't appear to participate in practice this Tuesday and was spotted wearing shorts and a T-shirt rather than pads. Missouri was hoping that Mookie Cooper, the Ohio State transfer, was going to be to them what Wan'Dale Robinson, the Nebraska transfer, has been to Kentucky, and that just has not happened. So Toski Dove, Dominic Lovett, some other guys in that Missouri room, but nobody stands out. That's my point. Have a bunch of kind of C to C plus type of guys, but no game changing playmakers, and that's why you see Tyler Beatty, which I'm sure we'll dive into, used so much in the passing game.
There are 6 players for Missouri, Beatty included, that have at least 10 receptions on the season. There are 8 players that have scored at least 1 touchdown receiving on the season for Missouri. So to your point, they've got a lot of guys that play. They've got a lot of guys who have touched the ball. but they don't really have a main guy right now. If I had to point to anybody, it would be Kiki Chisholm, who has really kind of been their possession receiver a lot during that Boston College game that loss last week.
Yeah, and to me, it's both a good and a bad thing that you have a bunch of guys contributing, as the numbers that you just informed us of indicate. Like, yeah, it's a good thing that a lot of guys are involved, but you'd also like to have a bona fide playmaker on the perimeter to help out Bazelak, and he just doesn't have that. So this is a Tennessee defense, as you said earlier, that I think should be able to make some plays. I'm not necessarily worried about the secondary. I'm worried about the safety spot from Tennessee.
Yeah,
Jalen McCullough, Trayvon Flowers hasn't been a good season for them, in my opinion. But the bigger circle that I'm circling is Tennessee's pass rushers going up against Missouri's tackles. Missouri's tackles have been very good this season. Javon Foster at left tackle, Hiron White at right tackle. They're both redshirt juniors. Both have been on the field this season for 175 dropbacks in pass protection. And Javon Foster, the left tackle, has allowed just 3 pressures and 1 sack in 4 games. And Hiron White has been even better in those 175 dropbacks. He has given up 0 sacks and only 2 pressures. Those numbers according to Pro Football Focus. So they have a really solid offensive line. And when you look at the statistics of the offensive line, it's even better than just watching with your eye. They're the nation's best, or one of the best at keeping Connor Bazelak untouched this season. Have only allowed 3 sacks through the first 4 games. 2 of those sacks came in the opener, and at 0.75 sacks allowed per game. Missouri is 6th in the country and 2nd in the SEC in sacks allowed. So they do a good job of keeping Bazelak protected. And part of that, Eric, is a lot of dinking and dunking. I don't know if you picked up on that, but if you were to look at the box score, you see 51 pass attempts against Kentucky, week 2. You see 41 this past week against Boston College. And what do you think when you hear that? Oh, this guy's 20, 30, 40 yards down the field trying to just flat out rip it. It's not that. It's a lot of dinking and dunking, trying to get it to Tyler Beatty out of the backfield. So if Tennessee can generate some pressure, which Missouri has not allowed this season impressively, if they could generate some pressure, affect Bazelak, and keep an eye on Tyler Beatty out of the backfield, I do, as you mentioned earlier, think Tennessee can make some plays defensively in this football game.
Yeah, and that's what gives me pause a little bit about defensively. More so, you'll still have a better opportunity compared to, that's what I said in the roundtable. You'll still have a better opportunity to get to the quarterback compared to what Emory Jones would give you last week. Because Connor Bazelak's going to sit back. He's going to sit there and try to look for a guy and throw it to him. But to your point, something I definitely did pick up on the more as the week went on, a lot of dinking and dunking, getting the ball out quickly. So again, it's like when you and I went to go watch, Walter Nolan against Anderson County there in week 1 for Powell. I mean, Anderson County and Walker Martinez got that football out really, really quick just to avoid big Walter Nolan, right? Kind of the same thing in the quick passing attack. So can Tennessee's ends, can Barron, can Young, can Harrison, can those guys get back there, get their hands up, disrupt it a little bit? Blakely, Tremblay, guys on the edges. Can you be more of a factor, or is it just going to put more and more pressure on the safeties, on Theo Jackson, on the linebackers? Boston College sat back and played zone a lot of the time and tried to keep everything bottled up in front of them. And Bazelak made 2 interceptions, 2 mistakes, both interceptions, and they were costly. I'm intrigued to see if Tennessee will do that, or if Tennessee will do this. Listen to this, Ben. You were diving into some Pro Football Focus numbers. I will as well. Hendon Hooker, I'm not going to get into his stats, but he has been exceptionally well when pressured this year. Very, very well. I mean, one of the nation leaders in terms of dropbacks when blitz and under pressure. Bazelak, not so much for Missouri. He's been pressured on 20% of his dropbacks. He's been 8-27, 0 throwaways. So he's either forcing it or he's taking a sack, but not taking many sacks, as we pointed out. He has a 43 passer rating, 118.3 rating when he isn't pressured. So when he isn't pressured, 118.3. When he is pressured, a 43 passing rating, which is just not good. So, a lot of that is is Tennessee going to stay back and play zone and play it safe, or is Tennessee going to try to get after it, knowing that the quick passing attack is coming, but trying to interfere with Bazelak? I'm intrigued to see exactly what it's going to do. I think Tim Banks is going to have to try a couple of different things, but Now, that Missouri offense, 483 yards per game, 38 points per game so far. Not the best running team, but just shy of 160, and it's pretty much all, Beatty. But it's thrown for about 325 yards per game, getting 24 first downs a game. Here lately, have been converting at an elite level on third downs, 60% last game. So, Missouri's offense is going to be a challenge. But again, I feel like there's going to be so much opportunity with the ball in the air. Tennessee can find a way to, create a turnover, make a key stop. Whereas on the flip side, I don't care who's blocking. I don't care who's playing quarterback. I think Tennessee should score points. Point blank, simple as that.
Yeah, I feel the same way about the offense. I'll be curious to see how many points Tennessee scores, because at the end of the day, this is still a very inconsistent Tennessee offense. But I think the opportunity is going to be there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I had it 34-31 in our picks. I don't think Tennessee's going to score 50. It hurts not having Cooper Mays. Your offensive line, I think Brent put this in the war room. I mean, you can't afford an injury. At point blank, you got Ollie Lane at left guard. If you have one more guy go down, you are in some serious, serious trouble, because Tennessee has no faith right now, at least it seems, in Dane Davis or Jeremiah Crawford to come in and slide Cade Mays back down. So, I mean, you're in trouble. So the offensive line, it's not great. It struggled against Tennessee Tech a couple weeks ago. I get that. But the opportunity with just how bad the defense is, 294 yards given up against Southeast Missouri State, 322 against Kentucky. Kentucky's a good running team. 275 against Boston College. It really Big Tenned it, and had two tight ends and a fullback a lot of the time. It's just, whatever scheme has been thrown at them, they have no answer for the run in that 4-2-5. And Jabari Small, Tyon Evans, we saw how well they worked together, not only in the Bowling Green game, of course, but last week against Florida. Now, did they go off for as much as they did in the opener? No, they didn't, but it was effective. They both got an equal, share load and 11 carries, and I feel like they both performed pretty well. So the opportunities there on offense, despite not having, your best five up front, in my opinion.
Yes, I agree. And I started the week off feeling like Tennessee would win this football game. But as the week has gone on, I feel more confident in Tennessee winning this football game. And I don't think it's because game day has creeped closer. I genuinely see Missouri's defense on film, listening to the coaches speak over at Missouri this week, and think there's a lot of opportunity for Tennessee, even without Cooper Mays. And without Cooper Mays, it does give me a little pause for concern, because they have not run the ball well whenever he's not been in the game. When Tennessee has run the ball well, it was before he got hurt against Bowling Green, on quarterback runs out of the pocket, or when Cooper was playing against Florida. Every other time when Cooper has not been in the game, Tennessee has not run it down an opponent's throat behind the offensive line. It just has not happened. So there is a concern there. But Missouri's defense is so bad that even with Ollie Lane at left guard and Jerome Carvin at center, Tennessee should still be able to run the football. And what has changed it for me this week is, again, listening to Eli Drinkwitz explain the struggles in the run game. Steve Wilkes, their defensive coordinator, explained the issues in the run game. And it's all predicated on lack of communication on Missouri's defense. They have openly talked about this week that they are struggling to communicate the plays to one another and get everybody aligned properly before the ball is snapped. So if you're allowing all those stats that you mentioned, Eric, about the rushing totals that Missouri has given up, and they even gave up 194 to Central Michigan in the opener.
Yeah.
If you're struggling against the run, you're struggling to get lined up, communicate the plays against those four teams, which Boston College, a great running team, Kentucky, a great running team. Tennessee is going to be a different challenge. And that challenge is the tempo. Tennessee runs practically 3 plays a minute, most in the country. And against running offenses that don't go up tempo, you're struggling to communicate the play in and get aligned properly. What are you going to do against a team that gets to the line as quick as possible, and their whole shtick is snapping it as quick as possible to get the defense out of sorts to catch them out of alignment. Tennessee's going to have a field day tying up the minds of Missouri's defensive players. Every single player is going to be tied up like a pretzel in their mind. So that's what's changed kind of the confidence for me from Monday to Friday, is that I think Tennessee's really going to take advantage of the miscommunication and the lack of being aligned on the Missouri's defense with the up tempo. And I think that will also make up for Cooper Mays being out. And I wanted to point one other thing out about the lack of depth along the offensive line. It's not even just the lack of faith in Jeremiah Crawford and Dane Davis that you pointed out, Eric. I think they have even less faith in the interior linemen that are up next. No Kingston Harris this week. You're without Riley Locklear because he had to medically retire from football. You really miss Kayron Calvert. You're without Cooper Mays. Chris Akrogane was in a boot this week, and even in the midst of being in that boot, was walking around with a pretty good limp. So I would imagine he doesn't play. I'm not ruling him out, because you can wear a boot all week and still play. It may be as a precaution.
Jackson Lampley.
He's not ready to play in the SEC.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
James Robinson, not ready. William Parker, not ready.
And again, William Parker's more of a tackle. I mean, we're running out of names here, man.
Yep. That's where I was going. Is that William Parker has been working more at tackle. So that's why you saw the note in the war room from Brent and Austin that's why Cade took some reps at guard this week as an emergency, because I think if Ollie Lane's playing poorly, Jerome Carvin playing poorly, Spraggan's playing poorly, I think they would still ride with them, honestly, even if they're playing poorly, because they're still better than the guys behind them. But if there's an injury to Ollie Lane or Carvin or Spraggan's, I think that they would slide Cade inside and bring in Dane Davis or Jeremiah Crawford, because even though they don't have a ton of faith in them, they have more faith in them than the other options in the interior.
Another note here on the offensive line. This is now the third time we're bringing up Pro Football Focus. I went from a guy that did not care a lick about Pro Football Focus to always bring it up, looking at it and always saying, all right, take it with a grain of salt, but look at this. I mean, Ollie Lane against Florida, take it for what it is, had the highest grade offensively for Tennessee, 18 snaps. Okay, so he played about a third of the snap of everybody else in terms of, who was out there the entire game. 18 snaps. He had a 73.8, which is considered an above average starter grade. His pass blocking was at 84.6, and that was on 13 pass blocking reps. So that's improvement. That's where he struggled the most. Run blocking, 72.3, which he's a better run blocker. Even in the Bowling Green game, whenever Cooper went down, Tennessee continued to run and run and run. I mean, Ollie Lane was in there for majority of that run share from quarters 2 through on. So Ollie Lane had the highest grade out of any offensive player against Florida last week. Again, about a third of the reps. So, you want to take a silver lining from that. Looks like Ollie Lane might be maybe improving, or we'll have to see if it's an anomaly. But
he's played better than I thought he would.
No, yeah. Well, I would have never said Ollie Lane would have factored into the offensive line rotation this year. Never.
Him or Kingston Harris.
Nope. And that's no disrespect to those guys. Ollie Lane, a local kid, good community in Gibbs. Shout out to Gibbs. Used to live over there. But I would have never, ever accounted for that. I mean, my impression coming into the season was, Kayron Calvert and Dane Davis are going to battle it out. Okay. Kayron Calvert's not there. Looks like Dane Davis is going to get a chance. Oh, nope. We're not going to do that. Okay. And then Dane Davis is going to be your swingman at that point. Oh, no. Okay. So what happened with Dane Davis? Was it overhyped in spring? So, I mean, we heard from a lot of people. I mean, it wasn't just us out there watching him take first team reps, but we heard it from coaches. We heard it from players. I mean, what's gone on from the start of camp until now to where the coaches literally don't have any faith to put him at right tackle, to slide Cade Mays inside to help out a little bit. I mean, it's kind of shocking, to be honest with you. And again, I understand he was a former walk-on and he is what it is, but I thought he would have played a much bigger role in the offense to this point, especially considering the injuries. I never thought Ollie Lane would be a key contributor. I thought it'd be Dane Davis over him.
I can't tell you from an offensive line standpoint why Dane Davis is not playing, but I do think part of it is the fact that Darnell Wright has really taken to left tackle, because when we did hear about Dane Davis, it was pretty much because he was the only body. Kayron Calvert was having his knee cleaned up during the spring.
They had Cade and Darnell both repping a right tackle in the spring.
And yep. So I think part of it's Darnell sliding over to left tackle, and he may not be a world beater, but he's certainly serviceable, more so than Dane Davis would be. So I couldn't tell you why Dane Davis isn't playing from an offensive line technical standpoint, but it's clear to me that they don't trust him at this point.
Darnell Wright's going to play himself into money.
Think so?
I think so. And that's just, coming into his college career, it's like, well, yeah, of course he will. And then seeing, his career up to this point, and now the move to left tackle. And like you said, I mean, is he all SEC? No, he's still learning. I mean, he's got a couple of holding calls this season to where he's tired, he's getting beat, and he's holding. I get it, but he's got such quick feet. He's athletic. He's dropped the weight. I think he'll continue to get better at left tackle. Play again next year. I think he's going to play himself into money over there at left tackle, because again, that's just such a critical position in football. So we'll have to see. I mean, long way to go. I don't know, just kind of a passing comment. One of the best storylines of the week for me, Ben, and this is just insane. I put it in my first glance piece when I discovered it, actually. Sean Robinson, who was the starting quarterback for Missouri last year at Neyland Stadium before Connor Bazelak came in and took over, he's the starting free safety for this team. He has a pick on the season. So when we talk about the struggles, when we talk about the struggles defensively for Missouri, it's like they got a quarterback out there playing. They really do. Yeah. Shocking to me, to say the least. Good for him for finding the field, but that is shocking to me. And what's that say about? I keep saying, I think from a depth standpoint, Missouri's probably better than Tennessee because Tennessee has no depth, but maybe not in some places, maybe not in the back end. They played a lot of young guys in this, specifically a cornerback in 2020. They're a year older, and they've been through the ring of fire and all that, but maybe they're extremely shallow at safety if they have Sean Robinson being a key contributor.
Yeah, I also think part of it is that he's actually been a legitimate defensive back, to the surprise of many over there in Missouri. Maybe I'm being too kind, but
he was
he's played well.
We knew last year that he was the athletic quarterback coming in. He's an athlete, and a lot of times those guys just sometimes got to find the field somewhere else.
Yeah, he's played well back there at safety, so it's not like that they're having to put a former quarterback back there. It's just kind of Bazelak passed him up, and he saw an opportunity and took it and ran with it, and he's performed well. But I think the safety tandem is probably the strongest part of Missouri's defense, between Sean Robinson, the former quarterback that you mentioned, and Jalen Carley's. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but number one, the other safety, he's very impressive. I remember watching him against Kentucky.
Does Carley's not play corner? Sorry to cut you off. Does he not play corner?
Yeah, I mean, he may bounce back and forth, but I've seen him mainly at safety, and Missouri's depth chart has him listed at safety as well. And like I was saying, in the Kentucky game, he absolutely came up and knocked the what out of somebody and jarred the football loose, if I remember correctly. And they called targeting on the field. It was overturned, and he was not called for targeting, but he'll come up and hit you. So we talked about that on the Swain event this week. Is their corners have played poorly this year, with Enos Rankstraw, who's probably their best corner. And they went out and got some transfers from Tulsa, Caleb Evans, Allie Green IV. They've kind of been so-so. Ishmael Burdine been so-so. And from a receiver's perspective and from a defensive back's perspective, Jason Swain reached out to Jonathan Wade, who was his teammate, played in the NFL, corner and safety. He also reached out to Fred White, who was on the 98 national championship team, played a big role on that national championship team. And both Jay Wade and Fred said that you would rather be stronger at safety than corner, because the safety can be an eraser. Can help over the top, and a safety can come up and also help in the run game, obviously. So I find it interesting that that's the strongest point of Missouri's defense, at least through the first couple of games. They do have a good set of linebackers, so maybe I shouldn't definitively say the safeties are the best part. Devin Nicholson, the junior, Blaze Aldridge is a freaking beast, the transfer from Rice, who is just a tackling machine. Those
tackling
four
for
that
loss machine.
Yes, he is. So Blaze Aldridge, Devin Nicholson. I should mention them first. That's my fault. The two linebackers in that 4-2-5 defense are the guys that stand out first and foremost. But then in the secondary, I think Tennessee's receivers are going to have a chance to get downfield like Javonte Payton was able to against Florida, like we saw in the first couple of games of the season, and make some plays. But they'll have to keep an eye out for those safeties.
Two more things before we get to our bowl prediction here, and we set you on throughout game day. I put a bunch of notes, or I put a couple of notes into the general quarters a couple of days ago on Tyler Beatty, and people didn't like him because it says I was pumping him up, but he's got 30% of Missouri's total offense, total yards from scrimmage. Incredible. Of course, he leads the team in rushing and receptions and all that type of stuff. He's among the SEC leaders in points and all that type of stuff too. I think he's a good player. Don't get me wrong. I do think he's a good player. They've gone against some lesser competition. I understand that. I know he didn't rush for 100 yards against Kentucky. I get that. Do you think Tyler Beatty is what he is and everything, or do you think it's just because they use the hell out of him? I think it's a little bit of both. I think he's a good player. I think they overuse him. I mean, Knoxville's own Elijah Young barely gets any run, and he's the number 2 tailback. So I think his numbers, though impressive and worth noting, are very important, very impressive, but I think they overuse him an awful lot, don't you?
Yes, but I think they have to because he is so good. So you said, I think it's a little bit of both. I think he is that good, and I also think that they have to use him that good because what did we say about the receivers? Well, they got a bunch of so-so guys, but they don't have a dynamic playmaker. Tyler Beatty is a dynamic playmaker, and he's just 5 receiving yards away from becoming the first Missouri player to ever rush for 1,000 yards and have 1,000 receiving yards. First player ever in Missouri history. He is on the verge of doing so. Is averaging 149.5 all-purpose yards this season, which is 8th nationally and most in the SEC. He's accounted for 48 points this season. That's 4th in the country. And tied for the co-lead in the SEC, or tied for the co-lead with LSU receiver Kayshon Boutte. So they have to use him as much as they do.
Maybe it's a Drinkwitz thing because they did the same thing with Larry Roundtree last year.
Because they had to. Larry Roundtree is in the NFL right now.
Yep.
Larry Roundtree is a beast, but they ran it more with Roundtree than they do Beatty. They run it with Beatty, but they really like to use Beatty out of the backfield as a pass catcher. And that's like my third biggest key of the game or the third biggest matchup that I'm watching for. I wrote about it, talked about it this week. First one is Tennessee's rushing offense against Missouri's putrid rushing defense. That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two is those solid, good Missouri tackles that haven't allowed much pressure, which part of that is Missouri getting the ball out so quickly, but they've also done good job this season of not allowing Connor Bazelak to take a ton of hits. Can Tennessee generate pressure? That's the second matchup I'm watching for. And then the third matchup I'm watching for, and you can speak better to this than I can because you played linebacker in college and you understand defending the running back in different situations, is how does Eli Drinkwitz match up Beatty in different plays on different players within Tennessee's defense? Does he try to get them matched up on a linebacker, whether it's Jeremy Banks, Juwan Mitchell?
I am putting Beatty as the number 3 option every time. So he is lined up against Jeremy Banks, and I'm sending him out, drag routes. I'm putting him out in the slots, curls, underneath, screens. I am making him the number 3 option. So twins over here, or a wide out, a tight end. Put Beatty on that side to make him number 3. That would be Jeremy Banks's guy and man. And I'm attacking Jeremy Banks, especially after kind of seeing the struggles in man coverage against Florida.
I would too if I'm Missouri, but if I'm Tennessee, I counter with a little bit of Aaron Beasley. I wonder if we see more Aaron Beasley this week, because I think Aaron Beasley is the most well-suited guy in that linebacker room to match up athletically with Tyler Beatty.
And you can flip those 2 linebacker spots. Like Banks could still call the defense if he's playing well, right? Like they're interchangeable. I don't know how much. Honestly, I haven't picked up on it if they've done it. I'm sure they've done it a little bit. I don't know how much they flip-flop, Mike will, whatever, but they are interchangeable. So you can do that, to your point.
And I don't know how good Aaron Beasley is in coverage. I don't, but just knowing that he's
better than Banks.
Yes, and I'm just going off the simple fact that he's more athletic than Banks. Banks is athletic, don't get me wrong, but I feel like Beasley moves a little bit better and could match up with Beatty a little bit more. And I also wonder, like, if you're Tennessee and you see Beatty split out wide or go in motion to split out wide, do you make a quick adjustment and throw Theo Jackson on him? Now, I don't know if you do that, then whoever Theo Jackson was defending, who goes out there? Do you bring a safety down? Because I'm not bringing McCullough down. I try to avoid McCullough on Beatty all day long. I try to avoid McCullough in coverage as every single time. McCullough just, quite frankly, has not been good in coverage because he's too slow. He's not athletic enough, and Flowers hasn't been that great either. I think I would bring down Flowers to take Theo's man if you put Theo on Beatty, because you don't want a linebacker out there in the slot on a receiver, so you may be left with no choice to play Flowers, or you take McCullough off the field and put a more athletic DB in the game for McCullough. I don't know. That's what you could do. I'm speaking in over my head on that's a Tim Banks thing. But just to wrap up real quick, my third matchup that I'm looking for, you got to find Beatty out of the backfield. They love to use him. Tennessee's got to be ready for him.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee will mix up his coverages, of course. Man, a lot of times zone. Again, I think you need a healthy dose of both of those. And plus, a lot of times when they're in zone, they have a man within zone. I mean, if you're playing, cover 2 over the top or cover 3 underneath or whatever, you're going to a man in your zone and then you're passing him along. Also, if they are just killing Tennessee with, short little, dinks and dunks here and all that, and they've kind of gone away from the passing game a little bit, you could take a Jeremy Banks and or an Aaron Beasley out, put Theo in the box as a linebacker in a money spot, and then bring in a Danico Slaughter or a Christian Charles or somebody else like that. That is also an option. So we'll have to see.
I just wanted to add real quick on the kind of the dinking and dunking. I feel like Tennessee's done a good job against the dinks and the dunks this season. Have you picked up on that? I noticed that against Florida. I made a mental note of, and I'm mainly referring to, I don't know if, I mean, it is dinking and dunking to me, but like wide receiver screens, all the different variations.
Yeah.
Tennessee has done a really good job of blowing up those blocks and swarming to the ball and gang tackling those receivers.
Right there, swarm. Tennessee has swarmed so well defensively, and I mean, a lot of times if you're lacking talent, if you're lacking, just the numbers defensively, you can mask a lot of that just with playing hard, hustling, swarming to the football, gang tackling. It was a turnover for a reason, but I mean that Alontae Taylor strip, that play. Put it on repeat, played in the Anderson training facility. That's what you show recruits, because you had Flowers holding him from behind, at the bottom, I mean, and then you had Alontae Taylor come in, strip it out. You had Banks smack him. You had Beasley jump on the ball. I mean, that is teach tape if I've ever seen it. So Tennessee defensively doing the little things right. You're right. They have swarmed and they've done a really nice job with that. When it comes down to it, I see Tennessee's defense making a play or making a couple of plays, making a couple more stops, and Tennessee's defense, getting Tennessee this victory. Let's hit on the quarterback real quick. Hendon Hooker, we expect to start. We expect him to be healthy, though it's not a guarantee. He has been on the practice field. He's taken the majority of the first team reps really all week long. Thought Hendon Hooker did a lot of nice things in the first half. The game kind of got away from Tennessee in the second half, of course, and then he was knocked out of the game. What did Tennessee do well in half number 1 in Gainesville that I do think you can translate, or that they should translate into 4 quarters against Missouri today?
I mean, it's the line of scrimmage. Tennessee controlled the line of scrimmage for the most part against Florida in that first half offensively, and were able to run the ball because of how they were controlling the line of scrimmage. And as we talked about a little earlier, I still think Tennessee will do so against Missouri because Missouri is so bad. But Tennessee Tech is also bad, and they didn't do it against Tennessee Tech, didn't do it against Bowling Green in the second half after – not even the second half, the final 3 quarters after Cooper got knocked out, didn't do it against Pittsburgh. So, yeah, there's a little, hesitation there in saying that they'll still do so without Cooper this time. They'll randomly do it for the first time without Cooper. But, again, I think the tempo is really going to be the difference in being able to do it without Cooper because, again, Missouri has struggled to get aligned, get the play in, communicate it to one another, and know what to do. And if you're struggling with that against offenses that aren't going up tempo, you're going to struggle with it even more so against an offense that is going up tempo. So I think that kind of offsets the absence of Cooper Mays and will help do so. But that's what I saw against Florida in that first half when it was manageable is Hendon had a time to throw the football. And as you mentioned earlier, when he was pressured, he was good. I tallied 4 for 6, 95 yards and a touchdown against pressure. And that was what I perceived as pressure. Obviously, we all have our own interpretation, but what I perceived as pressure, he was 4 for 6, 95 yards and a touchdown. Yep. And even on that, he couldn't step into the throw. Not excusing the throw, but he couldn't step into it because he had a guy in his face, and it's hard to make an accurate pass when you have a guy in your face and you can't step into it. So they controlled the line of scrimmage. I think they'll be able to do so because the off-tempo or the up-tempo will keep Missouri on its heels rather than on its toes. And I like where Hendon's at. I don't know where you're at with Hendon, but I think he's a solid little quarterback. Again, not an all-conference player, but definitely far better than what we've seen. And I've been really impressed with him since he entered the Pittsburgh game, aside from the fumbles. Just one interception in what, 2.5 games. And even with the one interception, there haven't been interceptable passes that he has thrown. You saw that a lot with JG, where he would throw passes that should have been picked off. I can't really remember any passes that should have been picked off with Hendon Hooker. My only complaint with Hooker right now is the fumbles. Other than that, I think he's doing a really good job, and I think you'll really see his talent against teams like Missouri and South Carolina.
Yeah, I think right now he's clearly the best option. And again, Joe Milton, gosh, if he would hit on a couple of those deep passes, it's a different conversation. Now, he came in Florida and he looked awful. He just looked awful. How much does that have to do with sitting over there and not being locked in the entire game, coming off the bench late in the fourth quarter? Just being cold, your team was getting drilled at that point, whatever the case may be. He looked awful against Florida, but I still don't think Tennessee's going to give up on Joe Milton, because if you could just make it click, I mean, who knows how high the ceiling is for him. But now Hendon Hooker's been fine. Clearly the best option. I'm with you, man. I think he gives this Tennessee offense a nice little wrinkle, and the pace is getting better at times as well. I got 2 keys real quick before we get into our bold predictions. First key, it's Bazelak against Tennessee safeties. Tennessee safeties, as we mentioned, have not played up to par so far. Trayvon Flowers, Jalen McCullough. How will Connor Bazelak, do against those 2 guys? And then flip the script. It's simple. Tennessee's running backs against Missouri's linebackers. You got Jabari Small, you got Ty Evans going up against Devin Nicholson and Blaze Aldridge. I mean, I wrote a story on it last night a couple nights ago, VolQuest, on just how dynamic and how efficient the running backs have been when they've been playing together, how they feed off one another, and how you're starting to see them incorporate into the passing game. A 47-yard screen pass to Evans there against Florida. So those are my 2 matchups. I'm really looking forward to watching to see how those unfold. And I continue to think this is a game that Tennessee not only needs, it's a game Tennessee, if you don't get this game, you should be kicking yourself all the way home, because you're a better football team, in my opinion. I was halfway to my bold prediction last week there with that Alontae Taylor strip. I even got one player involved, and when we mapped it out, my bold prediction, and I'm sorry if I'm stepping on your toes here, because I think it might be the obvious one out there. Tennessee's going to not shut down Beatty. He's too good of a player, but Tennessee will hold Beatty in check. I think he will score 1 touchdown today. I think he will have a combined yardage of 115. I mean, if you can limit him to 1 touchdown, total yards from scrimmage, 115 rushing and receiving, I think that's a job well done. And so I think overall group effort, Tennessee will channel in and stop Tyler Beatty.
That's less than what he's averaging per game. 145 per game is what he is averaging. So I would consider that a win, especially if that's paired with the production that Missouri is currently getting elsewhere on offense. Because if the receivers stay the same, Daniel Parker, the tight end, doesn't do much, no other running back does a ton, and then you get Tyler Beatty, what'd you say, 115, 110?
Yeah, like 115, yeah.
Yeah, then that's Tennessee's winning this football game.
Yep.
Just make sure somebody else doesn't beat you in the process of holding Beatty to 115. My bold prediction is that, I don't know how bold of the stat is, but because everybody's so focused on the running game, my bold prediction is that Tennessee throws for over 200 yards. And more specifically, I think Hendon Hooker reaches 200 passing yards. Again, I know that's not a big number, but everybody's keyed in on the run. I think Hooker, assuming the weather, which is a little questionable, as assuming it's not a downpour, I think Hendon Hooker has success through the air and is able to really open up the running game for Tennessee by making plays with his legs. If that, or with his arm, if that's not bold enough for you, Tyon Evans and Jabari Small combined for 200 rushing yards.
I like it. And also, you can look at the stat sheet and say, giving up 183 through the air, that's not that bad. That secondary for Missouri is, playing pretty well. Why throw it when you can run it every single time? That stat is skewed. Not saying Missouri's secondary is bad, but they're certainly not as good as they look on paper. Now, they have gotten takeaways. 5 interceptions, good for them. But why throw it when you can run it every?
But the offenses that they've faced, to your point about Missouri's pass defense, I think it's 33rd in the country.
No.
Something like that. It's much better than the rush defense numbers. I know that much.
Hey, the rush defense is second to worst in the country.
129 out of 130. I don't think I've ever talked about an SEC team being this bad. I mean, Vanderbilt has a better rushing defense, statistically speaking, than Missouri. That's how bad it is for Missouri. But the pass defense, those numbers look so good because, like you were just saying, they've gone up against teams that don't throw the ball a ton. Kentucky, run first football team. Boston College, run first football team.
2 tight ends.
And then then the other 2 games are against SEMO, Southeast Missouri, and Central Michigan. So, the passing numbers defensively are going to look good for Missouri, but they haven't faced a true passing offense yet. Not saying that Tennessee is.
Well, they will get tested regardless. Yeah.
Yes. So Missouri's not good. Missouri's passing defense numbers look good because they haven't faced anybody that likes to throw the ball.
GameQuest here, Missouri edition, wrapping up. And of course, it's brought to you by our friends over at Smoky Mountain Organics, East Tennessee's most trusted health and wellness store, focusing on natural products and organic remedies to a variety of elements. You can visit any of their 4 locations in Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, Sevierville, and the newest location in Knoxville, 8018 Kingston Pike, right across the street from Trader's Joe. Also, you can purchase online at the website, SmokyMountainOrganics.com. And if you go to any of their 4 locations, mention you're a VolQuest subscriber, you're going to get 15% off your total price, your total purchase price, 15% off. Just mention VolQuest in-store locations in Knoxville, across the street from the Trader Joe, Sevierville, Pigeon Forge, and Gatlinburg. All right, man, it's game day finally here. Both teams are 2-2, 0-1 in the SEC. Missouri holds a slim 5-4 advantage in the 9 times they played previously, but Tennessee's won the last 2 and 4 of the last 6. So should be a good one today. I'm expecting the weather not to be great, but excited to watch this team play, and hopefully Tennessee can pick up a victory. Plenty of stuff coming up on the website all throughout the day and throughout Sunday, right?
Oh, I'm muted. There I go. I thought we were getting out the door. My bad. But yeah, all the typical. We'll have post-game audio up as soon as the game is over. Rob will have his 4 takes. Eric, Brent, and Austin will be there. 2-minute drill will be filmed and posted. The post-game reaction pod, those guys will take care of that. That'll be posted. I'll have my notebook. We'll have plenty of other stories throughout the day and throughout Sunday and into Monday as Tennessee gets into South Carolina week.
Sounds great. For Ben McKee, I am Eric Kane. It is Tennessee at Missouri today, 12 o'clock Eastern time, 11 o'clock local time. Guys, appreciate it as you have been listening to GameQuest, a VolQuest production.
You've been listening to GameQuest, a VolQuest pregame podcast with Ben McKee and Eric King. Stay dialed in to VolQuest.com for complete game day coverage. This has been GameQuest, a VolQuest production.